Fantaisie Impromptu is a marvelous piece written by Chopin in 1834, but it's shrouded with controversy. Many people have heard that Chopin wanted the piece to be burned upon his death. But why? Chopin's acquaintances knew Beethoven well, and it is undoubtable that Chopin had studied Beethoven's work in great detail. Music critics have noticed the similarities between Fantaisie Impromptu and Beethoven's famous work, the Moonlight Sonata, for many years. Even the names are somewhat similar when you consider the fact that the proper name for Moonlight Sonata, the name Beethoven gave to it, is Sonata quasi una Fantasia. Also, there are 16 notes that are used a couple of times in Fantaisie Impromptu that go like this. These notes go great with the song and they sound awesome. But the interesting thing is that Chopin didn't write them. In fact, Beethoven did. Beethoven wrote them and used them in the end of the third movement of Moonlight Sonata, and Chopin simply used these same notes in the same order in his own song. There's also a fascinating similarity between the key signatures of Moonlight Sonata and Fantaisie Impromptu. The first movement of the Moonlight Sonata is in C-sharp minor. The second movement modulates to D-flat major, and then the third movement returns to C-sharp minor. In Fantaisie Impromptu, the first section of the song is in C-sharp minor. There's a slow middle section that modulates to D-flat major, and then the third section returns to the original theme as well as the original key, C-sharp minor. Chopin clearly had never intended on publishing the piece, otherwise he would have done so in the 15 years before his death. So why would you write a piece if you never intended to publish it? Fantaisie Impromptu is a very challenging piece to play, and I can't begin to imagine how difficult it would have been to write the song. The answer to this question would remain a mystery for over 100 years, until finally in 1960, the mystery was solved, when noted pianist Arthur Rubinstein acquired the album of the Baroness d'Este at an auction in Paris. Within the book was a manuscript of Fantaisie Impromptu that was written in Chopin's own handwriting. And across the top of the first page it said, "Composed for the Baroness," which would indicate that Chopin was commissioned to write the song for the Baroness and had actually sold the piece to her. And now the mystery is over. It is clear that Chopin had written the piece with the intention of never publishing it, because it had been greatly influenced by Beethoven's famous masterpiece, Moonlight Sonata. In the end, we can all be thankful that Chopin could never come to terms with actually destroying the piece in his lifetime, and his close friend could not keep the promise to destroy the piece after Chopin's death either. And thankfully, the original manuscript survived all those years before it was purchased at the Paris auction. I hope you liked this video. If you enjoyed it, feel free to give it a like, and also if you like my content, you can also feel free to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.